Canada has a major employment problem, and it is starting to undercut the financial and economic foundations of Canada to such a degree that soon every Canadian will be affected by this. And the culprits are starting to become more and more clear, but nobody's calling it out. Mark Carney keeps making strange announcements and commitments in other areas that don't seem to add up when we have major domestic problems that need to be addressed right away. If they are not, this could be devastating for Canada's economy and the future of Canada moving forward. This is something that requires immediate action. We need to get into all of this today. I'm going to provide some information up front that will help provide context for the video that we're going to cover. We're going to transform and dig through their information, provide some context that they conveniently left out. There is a lot to cover in today's video, so let's get into it. First quick hitter we have here is this little update on spending and announcements that Carney keeps making.
Canada has committed to NATO's new pledge, ramping up defense spending to 5% of the country's GDP over the next decade.
There are very big things to announce today. I don't know if you've taken the vote or you're going to take the vote, but I've been asking them to go up to 5% for a number of years, and they're going up to 5%. That's a big, from 2%. And a lot of people didn't even pay the 2%.
All 32 NATO members.
So 5% is pretty huge when you think Canada's GDP per capita and our productivity continues to fall year after year,
Members made the new commitment at the annual leaders meeting in The Hague this morning. It sets a target spending of 3.5% of each country's economic output on defense and 1.5% on related projects by 2035. The rest would focus on infrastructure like roads, cybersecurity, and industry. The increase in spending will cost Canada $150 billion every year, tens of billions more than is spent right now.
$150 billion. And all of these announcements continue to get more strange until you dig into tweets like this from Kirk Lubimov. Why is Mark Carney trying to pivot to the EU from the US? Carbon tax. It's not because Donald Trump hurt Canadians' feelings or the tariff situation that he's fumbling negotiating. If you remember, Mark Carney campaigned on industrial carbon tax. That's why we've been yelling about specific language, because they said consumer carbon tax, consumer carbon tax. Very important, because we know industrial carbon tax didn't leave and it will continue. The EU is implementing a carbon tax, aka a carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is a tariff that encourages other countries to increase and implement a carbon tax, and CBAM equalizes that in trade. He wants to implement the same thing in Canada. Why hasn't he implemented the carbon tax yet? He's waiting for these agreements to implement the carbon tax so he can use these agreements as validity. Basically, he's going to say, look, we've got to get these deals done with Europe. If we want to start doing trade with them, we're going to have to start playing ball with the carbon taxes. Why does he keep doing this? Why are these the decisions he makes when we have story after story of videos like this? Let's check this out.
School is almost out, and so are students, many eager to snag a summer job.
Oh my gosh, I've probably sent out close to 10 resumes for around my area, yeah.
But finding and securing one is proving harder and harder for students across the country.
And I know you guys are going to comment about that girl only putting out 10 resumes. She's just a little girl. 10 resumes is a lot.
So much so, Ottawa has announced an expansion of their Canada Summer Jobs program, which offers wage subsidies to businesses hiring young people for seasonal work.
So don't worry. The way to fix the youth unemployment crisis is more government spending by subsidizing the wages. Surely that won't be abused by the companies at all.
That comes with a $25 million price tag, a concern for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
This is at a time where the government of Canada is spending, tens of billions of dollars just on servicing government debt. So we're always cautious to see more expenditure at a time when,
It's close to $1 billion per week is what we're just spending in the government debt payments.
The government every year is adding on a lot of borrowing.
But there's no denying the demand for jobs is being felt here at home. A recent job fair at the Halifax Shopping Centre drew a big crowd.
We definitely saw between 100 and 150 people come out for the job fair, which is significant. We saw anywhere from high school students to certainly university and, younger grads.
But even with help, students say it continues to be a struggle.
In the summertime, it can be quite competitive, and due to my age, it's hard to find opportunities out there to get a paid job.
Another roadblock is finding a job that allows students to juggle other responsibilities.
As a nursing student, where we have a super busy schedule during all summer, and we have clinical hours, so that can make it difficult to work because we're already doing full-time clinical hours.
Do they not get paid for those clinical hours? You know, I would think, especially because it's, you know, government public positions, you should be paying them. I don't know. If you're a nursing student or a nurse, weigh in down below, please.
Well,
as the national unemployment rate skyrockets, job seekers of all ages are at a standstill.
My little brother trying to find just summer employment, and I have family members trying to find full-time employment that have recently been laid off, and it just seems like mission impossible.
Doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what type of job you're looking for. We have one of the tightest job markets that Canada has experienced in a long time, and it's going to continue to lead to photos like this. This is a Canadian Tire hiring event. I believe it was in Kelowna. Yeah, Kelowna, BC. And there is a line of people to get jobs at Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire would be minimum wage, entry-level role, okay? These are people lined up for that, and they can't even get those. I don't want to hear any more nonsense about labor shortage, because getting into this article here, and again, this is providing context for the video that we're going to break down, Ottawa sets target to keep Canadian labor force 25% immigrant, okay? Now, why is this important? With Canada in the midst of a labor crunch, the government of Canada has unveiled new targets to keep 1/4 of the country's labor force filled with immigrants. This is why Overton window is important, because although the target reduction for the extreme highs charted in the immediate aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic, when the figure hit 29%, it still fixes Canada to a labor market comprised of historically high rates of immigrant and refugee workers. So, that's why it's so frustrating. You need to pay attention to the details. It's still historic highs, and that's an obvious problem. And this is why it's such a big deal. This is the most noticeable for Canadians under the age of 25, many of whom are facing a summer jobs market that is one of the worst on record. And here's where it gets insane before we get into the video. According to November research by King's Trust Canada, the rise in youth unemployment has occurred in tandem with a massive increase in low-skilled positions being filled by temporary foreign workers. Between 2016 and 2023, the report found that the rate of TFWs working in restaurants increased by 634%, while those working in retail increased by 456%. Traditionally, TFWs was limited to the agriculture sector, where it was harder to find Canadians who wanted to do those jobs. Meat processing facilities, farm work. Yes, Canadians still did work those jobs, but we brought in TFWs to supplement those. Why are they in retail? Why are they in restaurants? There's an obvious group on the sidelines who's waiting for jobs, who can't seem to get them. And this is where the paradigm shift gets important. Tristan Hopper, who I actually don't even know, but he just put out this tweet that I thought was really interesting. People often ask me how to improve Canada's many broken institutions. One thing I'd advise is to stop immediately assuming people have good intentions or are constrained by normal boundaries. There are absolutely some amoral psychos in positions of power right now, and that is important to remember as we dive into this video here. Let's get into it. Did you like the video yet? It helps get this video in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. Don't forget to sign up for Wealth Simple. Link is down below. You get $25. I get $25. Taking on the big banks. Let's get back to it.
It's not a dirty little secret. It's out of control.
We are frustrated. We are angry. And people are going bankrupt.
And the next time you're driving on a highway with a transport truck beside you, I want you to wonder, how safe am I really?
We're in a big rig traveling east down the 401. It's a highway that has many transport truck drivers on it every day. But as we're finding out, all of those drivers aren't getting paid the same, and it's wreaking havoc in the trucking industry. Drivers like Karanveer Singh. He spends most of his time right here, hours on the road, hauling goods mostly from Canada to the United States.
And wait until we get into Mr. Singh's story.
At 18, Singh came here as an international student, chasing the Canadian dream.
I thought I was coming in a very good country where rules and regulations are followed, but all my dreams got shattered.
His story is one of unpaid wages, unsafe working conditions, and being misclassified as a contractor when he was really an employee.
So the labor laws that are broken here, the rules and other laws that are broken, there's a clear and obvious group, and we're going to get into it after we see a lot of the video.
Problems, he says, are widespread.
Truck drivers are the backbone of this country.
Let's see if CBC is able to call out the actual problem or if they just talk about some of it.
See how you're treating your truck drivers. They are the one who's suffering from wage theft. They are eventually leaving this industry because it's so abusive. There is so much harassment. There is so undercutting of wages, wage theft in this country, in this profession, misclassification. The employers treat us as a disposable commodity.
All of that,
which employers, which companies, which communities are they from,
is true. According to the Canadian Trucking Alliance, the organization represents more than 4,500 carriers, owner-operators, and suppliers across the country. It says that even during this trade war, the biggest threat to the trucking industry is actually the underground economy and a model they call Driver Inc.
We believe that in some parts of Canada, at least a third of the companies and the drivers are participating in this. And it's hurting us twofold as a society. Those are taxes that aren't going into our social.
Which companies, which drivers, which communities?
The network system. And on the flip side of it, it's about a 30% advantage in the marketplace. So what it's doing, it's driving compliant companies and the drivers that work for those companies out of business.
Yes, because if they break all the rules and they use government subsidies to pay for these employees and all of these other programs, they're able to underbid every legitimate Canadian trucking company. What's that going to do? It's going to disincentivize Canadians from wanting to operate legally and properly or become an employee for a trucking company. Then what are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with an industry that's been completely hollowed out by foreign communities.
Advantage because the employer can save a lot of money. Here's how it works. A carrier company hires what it calls incorporated drivers. This means the driver is selling their services to a company. Since they're not classified as employees, their take-home pay is more, but they lose labor rights. Things like fair pay, overtime and vacation pay, and health and safety protections. They're supposed to pay regular taxes plus an extra 5%. Problem is, Stephen Laskowski says, they're not always doing it.
For 10 years, I've come here and said, please collect the taxes that are owed to you by people in my industry. And for 10 years, have I felt silence? No. Have we had anywhere near the action? It hasn't even come close.
Laskowski says companies are purposely misclassifying drivers to save money. He estimates the Driver Inc. model has cost the government $1 billion.
And we have worked and pleaded with governments to address it. And the reality is they are starting to, but nowhere near to the level that needs to be done. Nowhere.
So for some people who have been a viewer for a while on the channel, you may remember me mentioning this. For other new people, I've been audited twice in the last 5 years. We have an entire industry that's essentially being run on fraud right now because foreign people come in, they register these companies, they break all of the rules. It's just people from India. I'm just going to call it out by name. People from India come in, a lot of them from the Punjab province, a lot of Khalistanis, and they start these companies. They only hire people from their own community. They have them on tumultuous visa status at best. You know, most of the time it's either illegally done by false refugee asylum claims or they have scam LMIAs and they continue to break all the rules. They're not paying taxes on this. And we'll get into another subject in a second, why this was hurting Canadians directly, because there is a lot of stuff.
So basically, Laskowski is saying companies involved with the Driver Inc. model aren't paying any payroll taxes, and that some drivers operate as ghosts and don't file taxes at all. He says the CRA needs to bring back penalties for companies who don't fill out T4As to indicate something called fees for service. There's been a moratorium on that since 2011. If it was lifted, it could help the CRA target trucking companies that rely heavily on independent contractors and audit them. But this tax lawyer says doing that is a sledgehammer approach and would clog up the system
for everyone.
Now, before we let him talk, people often ask, how do these foreign truck drivers get into these $1 million subdivisions and in these expensive housing communities? And it's because of something that has been referred to as the Brampton mortgage. And people have just called it the Brampton mortgage because they didn't want to call it the Indian mortgage, which is what it is. Basically, there is an entire infrastructure right now for people in the Indian community to have fake mortgage documents where they apply for a mortgage, where they get fake income, fake job documents, all these other things. Their books are completely cooked. And then they even have, it's gotten so sophisticated that they have call centers now so that when the banks call, they go, hey, is so-and-so working at your company? And did they make $150,000 a year? That call center, which is fake, goes, yes, buddy, they do. And then Canadians get priced out of a house because they had to submit their real documents, so they could only afford to bid $800,000. When the Brampton mortgage was able to afford to bid $1 million because it didn't matter. Their documents were fake. They could put any price they wanted to. And as a result, that's driven up house costs and it's created a housing bubble, which we all know is due to mass immigration. But these people who are breaking the employment laws, the labor laws, they're not paying taxes, are also doing that in the real estate industry. So what people don't understand is this has such a large impact to the overall financial and economic impact of Canada that's so much bigger than the trucking industry. But when you see what they do, all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, it makes sense how we ended up in this position.
People who are really pushing the boundaries, they actually know how to not get in trouble from CRA. Also, like if you set up shell companies, you don't put your name as a director of your corporation, you can do all these things to ultimately kind of creditor proof yourself against CRA.
In a statement, the CRA told us it's working to strengthen tax compliance in the trucking industry. And when it comes to the $1 billion in lost taxes, it says the CRA is not aware of the analysis that underlies this claim and therefore cannot comment. Singh says,
yeah, and obviously it's going to be hard to know how much money has not been claimed in taxes because it's all hidden, it's all fake, right? Until they catch it. But we know it's a problem, and it's a problem potentially worth billions of dollars, and it's so much worse than that because, again, it's going to destroy the trucking industry. And this is why I get mad at people like Ron Butler, the angry boomer, who said he's here to help. He said he's here to call out problems. Because if I were to go to Ron Butler and I'd say, hey, obviously most of the people who are doing this are in the Indian community, who also hurts the most are the Indians who get brought over, which is shown in this exact video. They just don't call it out by name, but we'll show it shortly. And then he's going to be like, how dare you? How dare you call them out? It's called a Brampton mortgage. What's Brampton known for? And that's why, again, you have to call out people like Ron Butler who don't call out the problem because obviously it's right in front of us.
Whatever they're doing, it's not working. He was misclassified as a contractor in both of his first 2 jobs.
I was a new driver. I didn't know much, right? How trucking companies operate, what are the things I need to take care of, what are the questions I should ask them. I was just so happy to get a job.
But in his case, the jobs didn't pay. After 3 years of fighting for lost wages at the Canada Labour Board, he just recently got an order. He's owed nearly $40,000, money he's not expecting to get back.
It's useless. Until the government enforce it, it is useless.
They don't even enforce the violent crime that we're getting. Those people are out on bail. You think these companies are going to pay a cent of that money they were just served?
Companies, they know what they are doing. Most of the times they will find new immigrants, new truck drivers to target because they are so easy to target because every new immigrant is desperate for a job.
So it's widely known.
Okay, so he himself is acknowledging the problem. So before anybody starts to get mad at me, they're the ones who are getting targeted. They get targeted by their own community. It's the same thing that was happening with the slumlords. They were getting brought in through these scam colleges, getting offered basically horrible degrees. And then they were getting put into basement apartments with 10 people, still getting charged $400 or $500 a person to share a mattress on the floor. It's their own communities who are doing this, guys. So before you get mad at me, let's call out their own communities. Their own communities should be holding themselves accountable, but the government is facilitating this.
It's not a dirty little secret.
No.
It's out of control.
The CEO at Criska,
it's not a dirty little secret. He won't call it out, but
a transportation group, also says it's time to turn up the enforcement or companies like his will go out of business.
I have competed, as many of us have, for many years based on price and service, where price should be established from the same ground rules as everyone, and that's paying appropriate taxes, treating people as employees in the manner that the government would expect.
Sean Walsh is an employee here. He knows the importance of having access to EI. 5 years ago, he had a heart attack, taking him off the road for months.
And look, I know some truck drivers like being owner-operators, and if you are a truck driver and you want to weigh in on that, comment down below. But the fact is, being an employee, in my personal opinion, and having these structures set up seems like a better option. I don't know. You guys, I'm not a trucker, so.
Was able to weather that storm, get through it, didn't lose my house. We didn't put hot dogs in our macaroni anymore, but we still had our meals. It was a testament to what we have in Canada. And the only way we have our social services in Canada is if we pay our fair share in taxes.
And just after this video, we'll show how these social services are being used.
The drivers were treated with a lot more respect than they are now. The whole industry is going down.
Ron Langevin has been in the industry for decades. He too worries about the future.
There's so much wrong with this industry right now. And the problem is it's the people.
What is it? What's the problem?
My age that are getting out of it. And nobody's stepping in to take our places. Neither one of my boys want to take over because it's a mess.
The Langevin.
Why would you want to take over when you see an industry that's going to be gutted by people coming in and breaking the rules?
They suspect companies that use the Driver Inc. model may also be cutting corners elsewhere, including safety, like basic truck maintenance. 2022 saw the highest number of transport truck crashes in more than a decade in Ontario, and the numbers remain high.
Yeah, it turns out if you have unqualified people working in an industry who are brought in, it's going to cause problems. Trucking is an important industry. It's the bloodwork of a country. It's how everything gets around. So to have it gutted by people who don't actually care about the success of the nation, they just care about making as much money as possible. Oh, man.
These issues are falling through the cracks. And the next time you're driving on a highway with a transport truck beside you, I want you to look at it, and I want you to wonder, how safe am I really?
Singh says in his experience, that assessment is true. Companies that misclassify employees care more about making money than safety.
Oh, what a surprise. These people who come from a country which is a dog-eat-dog world, where literally, if you win there, it is at the expense of somebody else. And operating the same way in Canada at the expense of Canadians and the community? Wow.
Take his first trip across the border at Port Huron, for example. He was the passenger being trained by who he thought was an experienced driver.
I met the driver and he was polite, and he, after like 1 or 2 hours, he explained to me that he have just done one trip. He basically destroyed the fender. He hit the concrete wall over there at the border, and I was so surprised, like, this is supposed to be my trainer, and he just like damaged the truck.
And that wasn't all.
And so after a few days, they told me that, oh, so there's a new driver. We are in need of a driver. We want them, but you have done a trip. So now you have to train this driver. So but just don't tell her that you just did one trip. So you just go with her, tell her that you have done a couple of trips, and you can just train her. You already done a trip. So
blind leading the blind. So basically you have unqualified drivers training unqualified drivers who's now training another unqualified driver. And one of them got in an accident on the training trip as the trainer. It's actually funny how insane this is. And this is why it needs to be called out. This is why it needs to be addressed. Don't be scared to call things out by name. We're allowed to exist in reality and acknowledge problems by speaking the truth. There is nothing wrong with saying what is factually true. And we're watching it happen here.
So you know what are the things you should take care of and what are the things you should not.
Singh is now an employee at a different company, fighting to make sure his experience doesn't happen to anyone else. He's with...
Quite the crew there. Does anybody notice anything about this crew that is fighting for truckers' rights in Canada? I'm looking at them. I think there's a correlation. I'm wondering if CBC is able to draw any sort of conclusion here. If you can look at this photo and you think I'm calling out something that doesn't exist, You're the insane one. I won't get gaslit on this. If you look at this and think I'm bad and I've made something up that doesn't exist, you're insane.
This group, Justice for Truck Drivers. It works to help drivers who say they've lost wages, been misclassified, or were otherwise exploited.
The government will let these companies operate knowing that they are bad employers who steal wages, who make the drivers work with unsafe equipment in unsafe conditions. They want their stuff delivered. They want their job done.
And this is the biggest thing. It's why we need to hold the government accountable, because these stories are what makes it feel like either the government is operated by the dumbest people on the planet, or this is potentially managed decline and they're doing it on purpose. And when you see stats like this, which is the total number of asylum claimants in Canada, again, big Overton window caveat there, Q3 2021, you can see that's at 150,000. That's the first bar they use there. And then you go, oh, Q2 2025, that's not that insane of a growth, until you see in just under 4 years, the number of asylum claims in Canada has increased by almost 300%. Well, okay, 300%. That is insane. That's 300%. When you factor it in against 10 years ago, like 2014, we had 13,000, just shy of 14,000 asylum claims in 2014. I wonder what percent that is, because now if you use 2021 and you wonder, how does this keep increasing? Where do these claims keep coming from? Well, they come from institutions like this, and this consultancy is running this as a promotional ad. It was posted on their own social media, okay? They made this public. They posted it themselves. This is a client testimonial, refugee case hearing approved, and it's just from June. Look at their reviews of the people who are making these claims. We've got Baljit Singh. From start to finish, my refugee application, wow, it was so great. And then there in the comments, again, this is all public. These are Google reviews. Satbir Singh, wow, again, what a coincidence. And the company is there. Again, this is all public information. More reviews. We got Sachinder Singh, or Singh Sachinder. I think that's probably the last name. Jasveer Singh. You know, I'm going to have to start singing myself if this keeps up, because I've never heard the word sing so much in my life. And again, the company is in the comments responding, proud of what they're doing. Sonu Sidhu, Bushashing, Parmar, these are nonsense names that I'm struggling to even pronounce. And it's driving me crazy, and it's starting to make me feel a little sick. But luckily, we have a new health minister for Canada. I do want to give a quick memoriam for Theresa Tam. Shortly after this photo, she was indeed eaten by this obese woman who is now our new public health minister for Canada. The things that are happening in Canada at an alarming rate are so funny, it's objectively insane. We can acknowledge, seeing that woman, she should not be in charge of the Public Health Department of Canada. However, she somehow managed to be so, which is why I'm going to reiterate, you need to acknowledge truths and call things out as they are. If you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can get it in front of more people. Don't forget to sign up for Wealth Simple. Link is down below. You get $25, I get $25, and have a great rest of your day.